Darwin.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's presentation. We're going to run through just a few housekeeping things, and then we will get started. I have put a link in the chat that has a copy of the slides and some handouts related to today's presentation. So please remember that Family Matters is unable to offer CEUs for trainings for participants. If needed, a certificate of attendance can be requested by contacting myself after the training. Family Matters is not a legal service. We do not provide legal representation or advice in any way. Please note that any information we share with you today is not intended nor should be substituted as legal advice. Family Matters is partially funded from the U.S. Department of Education. However, that does not mean you should consider us endorsed by the federal government. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the Family Matters website following the presentation. Please use the chat box at this time to state your name and the title or organization you're affiliated with. And if you got an email from me this morning and you're in an organization serving individuals that are watching this webinar, shout out to Shelbyville High School, please make sure that you are putting how many students or individuals are watching your presentation, this presentation today. Please use the Q&A box for questions. We will address these questions at the end of the presentation after the recording is turned off. Please help us by completing the brief survey you will receive following the presentation as well. And like I said before, a copy of the slides are in the chat box. So Family Matters, of course, is an educational advocacy helpline. Primarily, that takes a big part of our time where we help individuals to understand their rights regarding special education. We also carry the state's grant for the Educational Surrogate Parent Training Program. That's where I spend most of my time too. If you're interested in becoming an educational surrogate, please reach out to me. Once a year, starting in January, we host our Compass series, and Compass stands for Coaching Others and Mentoring Parents About School Services. We also have a DAISY data collection education program that Carrie does every fall. We do special education advocacy trainings, much like this one you're seeing today. We also get to host 2 vlogs from self advocates across the state that share their perspectives on navigating the world of inclusion. We have a quarterly newsletter and a transition news blast that comes out quarterly. And of course, last but not least, our monthly podcast. An episode of that will drop November 1st. So make sure you're checking it out on your favorite podcast platform. This is me, Abby, on the left, and I am not your presenter today. We're very excited to be hosting Rev Up Illinois as they talk with us today about your voting rights as individuals. So I'm going to, at this time, turn it over to Carol. Carol, I'm going to make sure you have the ability to share your screen.
Thank you, Abby. And I don't see Darwin in the window. Like, I know he's on.
Let me upgrade him to a panelist.
Okay.
Ta-da!
You.
Absolutely. Maybe, if it'll let me do it. There it goes.
Awesome. And thank you, Darwin, for coming off on camera. I almost see you. I just see your background up. All right, well, Darwin's going to figure that out, and I will get started. I just want to introduce myself and say thank you. It is really a pleasure to be here. I also want to say that this is about Rev Up Illinois, and it will be 2 parts of a presentation. One is the 5 W's of voting, and then we'll also talk more explicitly about what Rev Up Illinois is accomplishing, and really to see that you, how ways that you can get involved with us, because this is a hugely important election year, correct? But the importance of voting never stops. So thank you. Rev Up stands for Register, Educate, Vote, and Use Your Power. It is a grant through the American Association of People with Disabilities, AAPD, and it is to empower the disability vote, and address the 6% voting turnout disparity between people with and without disabilities. So when the disability community engages in the electoral processes, it helps the outcomes, shapes the future of accessibility to community integration, healthcare, employment, transportation, privacy, and other important parts of our lives, right? And our children. So if everybody's ready, here we go. I am Carol Rosen. Here's a little bit about me. I am a mom to two amazing children. I have a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old daughter who has complex intellectual and developmental disabilities and has really high support needs. I'm a committed and passionate advocate for the IDD community. And from 2014 until 2020, I served on the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. And also I served on its executive committee and chaired the Housing and Inclusion Committee. I'm super passionate about housing. In fact, I even got my master's degree with an emphasis on accessibility and aging in place. And I have a hugely strong commitment to create affordable, integrated, accessible housing. Darwin, if you're having trouble, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself. Maybe you want to log back off and log back on, and Abby will make you a panelist. And I'm trying to go a little slow. I've also done financial wellness training through National Disabilities Institute for people with disabilities. And I'm going to introduce Darwin. Darwin is an amazing advocate. He is a super strong advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. He's a long-term participant of the advocacy organization within the ARC called Going Home Coalition. He's one of the founding members of REV Up Illinois. He's done a ton of co-presenting with me on voter education and registration since 2022. He's also spoken on a national panel for Rev Up, which included guest speakers Pete Buttigieg and Julie Su. He currently lives in the Chinatown neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois. He's served as an election judge for 8 years. He loves to be active and go out. He goes often to the Johnny and Friends family retreat and has even done some scuba diving with Dive Heart. So here we go. Darwin, can you come on camera?
No,
You cannot.
I'm sorry.
All right, don't worry about it. Let's just go carry on. Thank you.
Today we're going to go over the 5 W's of voter registration and voting. These are what, why, who, when, where, and we're throwing in an H for how just for fun. Let's begin.
This is you?
Yes, and you.
Okay, just wanted to check. All right, we're on track.
Sorry about my camera, everybody.
I'm so sorry too, Dawen, but we'll just keep going and maybe there's a chance you can fix it at some point during the presentation. All right, thank you. So what is voting? Voting is a usually formal expression of opinion or will in response to a proposed decision, especially one given as an indication of approval or disapproval of a proposal, motion, or candidate for office. So these are things that you would vote in favor of or vote in opposition to.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to fix my camera.
Okay, so do you want me to take this slide?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I wouldn't worry about your camp.
was an American activist and advocate for people with disabilities. He helped to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and co-founded the American Association of People with Disabilities. He said, "Vote as if your life depends on it because it does. Voting is your right and your power. Your vote matters and can make a difference. Your vote can have a big impact on policies affecting people with disabilities and who is elected. Voting is part of being a responsible citizen and participating in a democracy. Voting helps in having your voice heard. Voting is a right and a privilege you have as a United States citizen. Voting allows you to give your opinion and vote for leaders to represent you. It demonstrates your beliefs at the levels of city, county, state, and country. Voting is so important because it allows you to participate in our democratic process."
So who can register to vote? There's certain specific details are pretty simple, and so we'll just dig in. So you must be a United States citizen. That's really important. You must be 17 years old on or before the date of the primary election to vote in, and you have to turn 18 on or before the date of the general or consolidated election to vote in that election. So right now, there's a really wonderful thing that has happened, which is as early as 16 years old, you can pre-register to register to vote. So if you do support someone who is turning 16 and is getting a valid state ID, that's something you can do at that time. And it's incredibly easy. My son got his driver's license and we did it on the spot. So now it's off our plate and we'll just check in that he's a registered voter when he turns 18. Another really important thing to remember as we move is to change our address, because you must live in your election precinct, that's where you're going to vote, at least 30 days prior to election day. So I do know of some people that unfortunately had moved and they didn't update their address, and they will not be able to vote in this very, very important election. You must not be serving a sentence of confinement in any type of penal institution or prison. So it really has to do with the conviction. If you have a charge and you are not convicted, you can still vote. And if you're done with your sentence, you can also vote. You may not claim the right to vote anywhere else. So it's not that you can vote early and often. You only get one vote. So remember that as we move forward, because there's also people who register for mail-in ballots and go to a polling place. You can't submit both of those as your vote. This is also really important and will come up again later. People ask me all the time if someone has a guardian or they're a guardian to somebody, can they vote? And that answer very clearly, which we'll get into more detail later, is that even if you have someone who you are a guardian for, or you have a guardian, you still have the right to vote. It is that important. Unless they were to go, the guardian was to go to the court and ask them to strip you of your right to vote, you have the right to vote.
When should I register to vote? You should register to vote if you have never registered before, if you have moved, or if you have changed your name. Otherwise, you are already registered and do not need to do anything before you vote.
Thank you. We need certain ID when we register to vote. This would be 2 pieces of identification. Neither one of them needs to be a photo ID, but one must include your current address. So remember the whole thing about updating your address if you've moved. Acceptable forms of identification include a social security card, an Illinois driver's license, or Illinois state ID. Both of these need to be valid. If they're expired, it won't work. An employee or student ID, a birth certificate, a utility bill in the applicant's name with the address, mail that's postmarked to the applicant with their name and address, a valid US passport, a public aid card, people call it SNAP or Link, a credit card, or a lease or rental contract with the person's name and address on it.
In Illinois, you can choose from 3 ways to register to vote: going to a government office or polling place in person, sending your registration form by mail, or filling out your registration form online. It doesn't take long to register to vote, but depending on when you vote, it is a little different depending on the method you choose.
Thank you. So here's a link on this slide. There's 2 ways that we've put on here. And Abby has the PDF and it's going to send that out. So you can click on an active link on the PDF, and that will also take you to how you register to vote, or the QR code on the right. You use your camera, you don't take a picture of it. It'll bring up a yellow square around the QR code with a website that you click on. Right now, you cannot any longer register to vote online. So this is a little bit moot, but this is important, like for future elections, like let's say you're supporting someone or you are a person who can't vote in this election, but you want to register for the future. These are really important links for you. Okay, so Dawan, is this you or is this me? I have it as me.
Me.
You? Okay, go for it.
How can you register to vote in person? If you want to register to vote in person before Election Day, you can go to many different places. These locations include any office of the Illinois Secretary of State, your local Board of Elections office, other government buildings, and any early voting location.
So there are 3 ways to cast a ballot, and that will show you how to vote. You can do early voting, you can do vote by mail, or you can go on election day at your assigned polling place. So early voting can be done like right now, as we've done more of these presentations. There's more polling places, that's where you go to vote. And those are all over. You can just look those up online, like early voting sites, and it'll ask you for your zip code or what precinct or community you live in, and that will tell you. Like right now near us, ours opens, it's open, but check the hours, because for example, my daughter went to vote yesterday and I really didn't realize it's only open till 5, so we missed it. So it is open generally like Monday through Friday, but it does have limited hours. So be sure if you're going to go, please go and leave yourself some time to do that. It's been taking longer because, again, this is such an important election. I've heard people having no wait at all during early voting, half an hour, 45 minutes. But I think election day is going to be swamped. So early voting is one of the best ways to go. And Darwin, I'm going to ask you, why is early voting the best way?
To avoid the long lines.
Right, to avoid the long lines. Darwin is he's an election judge, so he's like, that is his biggest piece of advice to everyone. Voting by mail, you would have had to request your vote by mail ballot. There's also an accessible vote by mail ballot, which would be delivered to you electronically, but needs to be returned by hand to a ballot drop box or to a post office. So that's something that we'll talk about later, that if you may want to explore that. You can also vote by mail permanently or in one election. The nice thing about voting by mail is it alleviates some of the stressors of going and waiting in the line, and it gives you a chance to really do your research. If you're someone that needs a little bit more time to make their decisions, you can work through the mail-in ballot. However, you have to remember, you need to get that ballot dropped off so your vote matters and that your vote counts. That has to be done by the end of the day on election day. The other thing you can do is, for sure, go to on election day at your assigned polling place, which many people are going to do. And we'll talk more about that too. Okay. So this is how you vote by mail. Here again is that link to a voting by mail agreement and also the QR code. If you're going to do accessible vote by mail, you still have till the 31st to submit this. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me right now to take a chance that it may not get sorted out and get to you to get back. But if you want to do this in the future, again, you can do this for one election or permanently. You still have the option to go to the polling place, but you can't submit 2 ballots. And the other thing is, if you use this link or you use this QR code, it will take you to this screen. You'll follow the prompts and you will need to put in on the bottom right, you'll see a big red arrow that says, please select a jurisdiction. There are over 102 separate jurisdictions throughout Illinois. So it's really important that you use those prompts and put in correct information if you're going to choose to vote by mail. I think it's a great option for a lot of people. In fact, I got in a conversation with a man and he in the polling place line the other day, and he asked me about this. I don't know why, but because I've been wearing a vote shirt for almost 100 days now. And he said his wife just, if she isn't able to do it by mail, she's not going to vote because of her situation. All right. Thank you. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Thank you.
If I prefer to vote in person, where do I go to vote? Where you go to vote is called a polling place. They will be places nearby in your community, such as a library, school, house of worship, police department, town hall, or other municipal buildings.
How do you find your polling place? So often, if you're already registered, you'll notice that you get a little card in the mail. And generally speaking, your polling place doesn't change. So if you're used to going to a specific location, that's probably where you're going to end up. Now, my early polling place, where I can go to vote, is different than my polling place on election day. So again, you're going to want to pay attention to that. And here again are that big red arrow with a link that you can check your polling place and just follow the prompts, it'll tell you, or the QR code on the bottom right.
And inside.
Are you good?
Yeah,
All right.
there's a lot of another place.
Darwin uses his communication device and he does an amazing job, and we're going to figure out an even more amazing way to use it because he's
What ways can you vote in person? There are 2 ways to vote in person. One is by paper ballot. The other is by electronic voting machine. Polling places should be accessible. This means there should be accessible parking and entryways to the polling place. Polling places should also be able to provide options for people who may need large print materials, a magnifying glass, touchscreen voting machines, and assistance if necessary to help you access a paper ballot or voting machine. Someone can help you vote if needed, they just can't tell you who to vote for. That's completely up to you.
So Darwin said something really important, that if we're going to support people who need assistance to vote, then we need to respect them and keep their choices their own. And they may not always be in agreement with what we choose. Darwin, if you need something like large print materials, a magnifying glass, a touchscreen voting machine, who do you ask at the polling place?
The poll worker.
So the poll worker, is that the election judge too?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. So someone,
you'll ask whoever at the table.
Okay, great. So anyone should be able to help you with that, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So what identification do you need when you go to vote? In Illinois, you don't necessarily have to take the ID that you used when you registered to vote to the polling place. You should just be able to give them your name. However, like I just did early voting, and I can't even imagine what it's going to be like on election day. If you have a piece of identification with your name and address on it, it makes the election judge and poll worker's job a lot easier to just sign you in. Okay, so I recommend it because if there's any questions or you're a first time registered voter, you want your vote to count. And so the amount of time and effort it takes to bring your ID, I think far outweighs if you don't have it with you and somehow they would need it. And the other thing is, if you don't have it and they would need it, then you could still vote provisionally, but it does mean that you have to get them that information before they will count your ballot, and that's also time sensitive. So to me, it's just easy to bring those two forms of ID that we talked about. Bring your social security card, keep it safe. Bring a state ID, bring a driver's license, bring a student ID with your name and picture. But just let's make it easy for everyone, because this is, again, make our vote count.
You may be asking, how do you learn about the candidates? Knowledge is power. Learning about what's going to be on your ballot and the issues you are voting on is an important part of becoming a well-informed voter. Here are some ways we learn about important issues coming up in the election.
So becoming a well-informed voter includes finding out what's on the ballot, researching key issues in your community, and learning where candidates are on disability issues. Again, in this specific election, it is hugely important to our community, right? To learn where candidates are on disability issues. Again, Rev Up Illinois is nonpartisan, but there are clear differences in the way the candidates are talking about people with disabilities and their intent on how they want to support them in programs that support them. So here are some great resources. I'm going to speak quickly through Illinois Voter Guide, for Vote 411, Vote Smart, Ballotpedia, but I do have to say I am loving Ballot Ready for a lot of different reasons. It's easy to navigate. I've been using it also, and the wonderful thing is you can research the candidates, research the issues that are very specific to your community. It'll get you there and what you need. And it also lets you create a sort of mock ballot that, again, if you are a person who needs support at the polling place or are supporting someone in the polling place, you can go armed with your choices, again, to keep your choices your own. And you can print something out and take it with you. And it's really, really easy to use. And again, it gives you opportunity to take more time, learn what you want to learn, and fill out that sort of mock ballot. This is what we call the golden ticket. This on the upper left-hand side, it's registering to vote. Again, that is not, you can't do that right now at this point in the election process, but you certainly can use the code on the upper right to find your polling place. You can use your bottom right to look up your voter registration lookup. And we talked about registering to vote by mail. There is accessible voting by mail that you can register till for the 31st, but I don't know. I feel like a curmudgeon, but I wouldn't do it right now. So here is a resource that will get you to a Illinois voter registration application in English and in Spanish. If you need other languages, they are there. Sometimes it's about connecting resources to the people that need them. There are registration applications in over a dozen different languages. Dawen connected his organization to Chinese registration applications. And there's a lot of other opportunities. So please don't let the fact that you may not be, English is not your primary language, stop you from becoming a registered voter and voting. Okay, now we are going to move into the second part of our presentation, and it's on Rev Up Illinois and building the power of the disability vote.
The ARC of Illinois was first awarded the REV Up grant in 2022. This year, REV Up received an unprecedented amount of applications. From the 98 applications received, 72 projects were awarded the grant in 28 states and DC. The ARC of Illinois was the sole recipient of the AAPD's REV Up grant in Illinois and was awarded the REV Up Illinois Coalition designation to begin building the power of the disability vote through collaboration with organizations like yours. We're only able to reach new heights when we partner and share REV Up's goals.
Thank you, Dawan. I have one last suggestion. Maybe you want to not use that background and just do none background, and then maybe we can see you instead of the background, if you want to try that. Okay, so we talked about what Rev Up means. It means register, educate, vote, and use your power. We know that it's about building the power of the disability vote through increasing civic engagement in the disability community and improving the accessibility of elections. So Rev Up is a national movement, but we really feel strongly that things happen with the power of local and grassroots organizing, and we're seeing how that happens already in Illinois. Rev Up has coalitions in 21 states and partners across the country. If for some reason you know someone outside of Illinois, you can connect them to their local Rev Up coalition, or if they're interested, they may want to start one themselves through their organization or as an individual. And we're looking to you today to see ways you can connect with us in bigger ways as we move forward. Again, because the disability vote is so important. It's not just about this election.
Today, we will be sharing ideas of how we can collaborate on Rev Up Illinois' 2024 goals. How can we as individuals and organizations increase voter visibility, outreach, increase polling place accessibility, combat voter suppression, and overall, build civic engagement? Imagine the power of the disability vote as we increase voter engagement.
So as I mentioned, we're looking to partner with different organizations and individuals. We do have monthly meeting. So if you are a self-advocate, an individual, an advocacy organization, a disability student group, part of a transition program, part of a center for independent living, a center on deafness, part of special recreation, a voting organization already, like League of Women Voters, we would love to have you as part of our coalition and organize activities through you as well. And let's explore how you can make a difference. And we welcome everyone, and we want people engaged on this issue. This is part of that, what I had talked to you about earlier, and the importance of guardianship and how it affects people who with disabilities who would like to vote. It was such a hot topic that in addition to what I discussed with you earlier, that you have the right to vote even as a person with guardianship or as a person who is a guardian for somebody, that is our mission to support them in the ways that they need. So that's a really important thing. The Department of Justice in 2024 came out and said states cannot ban people from voting or registering to vote just because they have a guardian or conservator. States cannot make rules that make voters work harder to show that they are eligible to vote, like petitioning the court to vote or taking a competency test. They cannot ban voters with disabilities from receiving the help they need to vote. In fact, voters can get help requesting, completing, or returning a ballot. They can get help when they vote in person, if they're voting in an absentee ballot, or by a mail-in ballot. They can also get help from anyone that they choose, not just an election worker. So if that means you are a PSW, a DSP, you can support someone at the polling place. It's their vote. It's not ours to make that decision for them. And if you want, you can also engage a polling worker, an election worker. So if voters with disabilities need help, they can also get that to put their ballot in a mailbox or a drop box, and they must be able to get help from someone that they choose. So
Telling you.
that I know, I caught my breath there. Thank you, Dallin. So we have monthly Rev Up meetings. We just had one a couple of weeks ago. And if you'd like, please contact us through Abby. You can put your name in the chat. We'll get those. We can add you to our Rev Up Illinois listserv. There's great sharing of information. We catch up. People are doing really wonderful stuff that we're going to be talking about. It's a way to share those project ideas, advocate additional advocates, collaborate, and celebrate. And this, again, it's, we love having continuing the momentum of Rev Up Illinois, and attendance is not mandatory because we do record the meetings for our members to share out there.
REV Up Illinois does a lot of outreach. What ways can you involve your legislators in voter registration and education? We can provide you with talking points or co-present with you.
Thank you. And that's Darwin. He took his whole Quitac Center group to go see Senator Villanueva's staffer and talk to them about what was important to them as people with disabilities living in the Chinatown community. One of the ways we engaged Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson was that we got proclamations from them for Disability Voting Rights Week. This happens annually. This is a great way for you to connect as an individual or an organization and get the word out through your community and get it out on social media.
I have been an election judge for 8 years since I registered to vote in high school. I really like to engage people and talk to them about how they can become an election judge and make a difference. It is important that people with disabilities get more involved.
And Darwin has at least gotten 3 more people with disabilities to become election judges. It's huge. Election judges aren't necessarily trained to work with people with disabilities. So when the disability community steps up and into those roles, it's really important. And it is a paid opportunity as well.
I enjoy my work with Rev Up Illinois and giving presentations. Here is a picture of me at Quitac Center talking about voter education and registration. We can collaborate with you to do something similar. After the presentation, Rev Up was able to provide voter registration materials in Chinese to Quitac Center participants.
The other thing I would love to point out to everyone is a wonderful series that was developed through our funding through the Coleman Foundation and AAPD. This lives on the Arc of Illinois website. It is it's jewels because it really teaches you some great advocacy tools. These modules include how a bill becomes a law in Illinois and federally, all about voter education and registration, looking up your legislators, crafting an elevator speech, how to submit witness slips, arranging a meeting with your legislator, discussing politics with civility, and becoming an election judge at polling places. One of the other important things that Rev Up has done is we have gone into the state-operated developmental centers, and we've participated in community transition resource fairs at the state-operated developmental centers, which include actually all 7 at this point. I guess I need to update my slide. And as a result, really important things have been happening. So we've had well over 50 people registered to vote through the efforts of the state and through the outreach from Rev Up Illinois. We've had a lot of polling places restored on site at the state operated developmental centers. We've had overwhelmingly positive feedback about this as a resource, and we continue to engage state-operated developmental centers and other organizations for further advocacy presentations. So when we look at building community capacity, if you are in a more, in a state op or an ICFDD, and you have the ability to vote, you're going to vote on issues that are important to you. And part of that is changing the community so that we have community residential settings and other important issues that as a person with disability, or not too, if that's important to you too. Go ahead, Darwin.
Now, we're going to be discussing some of the projects we and others have accomplished in the last couple of years to give you ideas of how you may want to participate in Rev Up Illinois activities. We've estimated that over the last year, we've reached over 260,000 through our presentations and media participation. This picture of the QR code is an ongoing project where Rev Up Illinois has collaborated with the Illinois State Board of Elections and created accessible voting information in English and Spanish. Can your organization circulate this QR code and other voter resources out to your listserv? Do you need this type of resource in another language? Let us know and we can help you create something similar.
And I think Abby has a lot of resources that you could put out last minute for your groups and organizations or as individuals on social media. And I do want to say this year again, because it's an election year, two dozen presentations is quite a bit, but this year has been really much more because we become a coalition. So people are bringing the work into their organizations, and we are happy to support you to do that. And it's really growing. So it's wonderful to see that. So we also actively promote Rev Up and Disability Voters' Rights Week extensively. It happened the 9th to the 13th this year. We put things in our newsletter and our social media platforms. And we have also collaborated with the Illinois State Board of Elections. Anytime people send me items from their organizations or as individuals, we post them on our Rev Up Illinois Facebook and Instagram pages. So it's a great way for you to also get some additional exposure if you're going to be working on information on voting. So it's just a great, wonderful swirl of collaboration. So if you are, please get those to me.
Here is an idea that was presented by the Evans family of Glen Ellen. Miles, shown in the center, teamed up with his local chapter of League of Women Voters of Glen Ellen and Wheaton in the Western DuPage Special Recreation Association (SRA). This event took place in 2022 and engaged aid program participants in voter education outreach efforts aimed at adults with disabilities. Adult participants engaged in an interactive presentation on what it means to be a voter, voted in a mock election, and ended with the opportunity to become a registered voter. Voter outreach engaged dozens of adults with disabilities in the western suburbs of Chicago, helping the League of Women Voters further its mission of ensuring everyone is represented in our democracy. Could you create a collaborative team and do something similar?
And the Evans family is amazing. And there's another video up on the Facebook page for Rev Up Illinois. And Miles's dad works with the League of Women's Voters, and Miles's mom also is really, they're just amazing in the disability community, doing great things with housing and voting, and they're wonderful advocates. I'm not going to show these today, but these are wonderful ideas. This is Erin Compton on the left and her friend Caroline O'Hara. And Erin registered to vote through her phone with just very little support at an ARC conference. And this year, Caroline wanted to do the same, and she wanted to register to vote. Erin helped her with the prompts. You can see a worksheet. They use that the voter registration QR code, and Erin helped Caroline get this done, and she's all registered, and I'm excited to hear if she already voted. This was a reel that went out on Instagram and has gotten thousands of views. This was a video that we did. Again, I won't show it to you. I believe that you can see it in the presentation that will be sent or has already been sent out later. This was at Disability Voting Rights Week Parade, and we use signs to tell people to vote. And it's just a really fun video. And a lot of people that you might know from a lot of different organizations and state advocacy organizations. We also were on site. This is something that you could do very easily if you're involved with Special Olympics or a farmer's market, or your legislators having some kind of outreach or town hall. You could do something on the disability vote. Again, it's nonpartisan, and so it's a really wonderful way to engage people. It's not only to register to vote, but get involved with Rev Up Illinois. We've also had a wonderful thing that happened in our last meeting. Someone said pizza in the polls. So they had pizza and talked about voting, and anyone who wanted to could register to vote. This was the Special Olympics cheer team. They actually did a fantastic cheer around voting. We've had people do videos on healthy cooking and voting, and they're all up on our social media sites. And Darwin, did I take that away from you? But 45, sorry, there you go.
It's okay, I just go with the flow.
Here is a list of how some participants will be engaging. We're looking forward to seeing you at our next meeting. What ideas will you have?
Yeah, and that's a list that sums up a lot of what we've talked about. And we sure hope that you will join us. This is a recap of some of the resources. Feel free to reach out to me through Family Matters or through my email address at the ARC of Illinois. Please come get involved in advocacy also through Going Home Coalition. We would love to see you there. We talk a lot of really important issues facing the developmental disabilities community. Here are all kinds of ways to connect with us on our social media platforms. And if you are not signed up for the ARC of Illinois newsletter, that's a great way to keep on top of things as well. And I think we're going to take some questions now with the